Hey, good afternoon, everybody. If you want to come in and have a chair, we'll get started. I'm hoping we get a few more folks that'll wander into the room for us. While we're waiting, I'd go ahead and mention that we have our 50-50 raffle. We have our silent auction going on in the back, so be sure to buy your tickets for all of that. I also want to mention our partners who have supported us, our conference supporters and sponsors for this week. I mentioned them earlier, but everybody's running in. So while you're coming back in, I'm going to mention them. We have our water champions is AE2S, Houston Engineering, Moore Engineering. Our water partners include Apex Engineering Group, Bar Engineering, Bartlett and West, Bismarck Mandan Convention and Visitors Bureau, Devil's Lake Basin Joint Water Resource Board, Onstead Twitchell, and Vogel Law Firm. Our water supporters include Ag Country Farm Credit Services and Farm Credit Services of Mandan, Dakota Supply Group, Dwyer Law Office, HDR, Minnesota Valley Irrigation of Bismarck, Montana Dakota's Utilities Company, North Dakota Rural Water Systems Association, North Dakota Soybeans Growers Association. So hopefully we have enough folks in the room that we'll get started here. And we should thank also our conference center here, Bismarck Hotel and Conference Center, for lunch. And I'd also like to take a moment now to thank one of our water champions specifically, and that'd be Houston Engineering. To help introduce our next speaker, I'd like to have Michael Gunsch with Houston Engineering come up, and while he's making his way up, we'll show a short video on Houston Engineering. Michael?
Houston Engineering's team of civil engineers, planners, surveyors, GIS analysts, and more have served clients for decades. When you work with Houston Engineering, you get a local team supported by a network of professionals who span the upper Midwest, providing a full-service experience, from the vision to the completion and everything in between. Let's get to work.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michael Gunsch with Houston Engineering. This afternoon, I'd like to introduce Mike Swenson, who is sharing with us today an update from the Corps of Engineers on the Missouri River. Mike Swenson is the power production team leader in the Missouri River Basin Water Management Office, which is responsible for the regulation of the 6 main dams on the Missouri River. His team is responsible for hydropower, intersystem regulation, fish and wildlife. Mike has been with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for more than 30 years. I've known Mike for a number of years, and this would be in closing, but I'm going to say it up front because Mike will take questions later. We appreciate what the Corps of Engineers does for us and the state of North Dakota in management of the Missouri River system within the bounds of the master plan. Obviously, we have disagreements periodically, but it's important that we have this communication that's ongoing. And within the, obviously, the authorized purposes. Looking forward to hearing the update in the Missouri River and how it's managed from Mike. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, thanks, Michael, and good afternoon to everyone. As Michael said, I'm Mike Swenson. I'm one of the team leaders in our Missouri River Basin Water Management Office. And today I'm just going to give a little background on Missouri River Mainstem Reservoir System for those who aren't familiar with it. And then we'll talk a little bit about current conditions in the basin, and then give a little preview of next year based on some of our early runs for the annual operating plan. Okay, so the Missouri River Basin Water Management, our mission is to regulate the 6 main stem dams on the Missouri River. Our priority here is life and safety, and we operate the system of reservoirs within the guidelines in the Missouri River Main Stem Master Water Control Manual, or Master Manual, as it's mostly known. The operational guidelines in the manual are largely written around navigation, water supply, and flood control. And but we do operate for the other authorized purposes. I can see this one a little better. Hydropower, fish and wildlife, irrigation, recreation, and water quality. We also comply with other federal laws, and that includes the Threatened and Endangered Species Act when water conditions allow us to do so. Okay, so this is the Missouri River Main Stem reservoir system. We have Fort Peck Reservoir in Montana, of course Garrison here in North Dakota, and we have a Wahi, Big Bend, and Fort Randall in South Dakota, and then Gavin's Point, which is on the border there between South Dakota and Nebraska. We also have the Bank Stabilization and Navigation Project, which runs from approximately Sioux City down to the mouth of the Missouri River near St. Louis. The Missouri River Basin is a very large basin, over 500,000 square miles, very diverse in terms of meteorology and hydrology. The river is the longest river in the United States, over 2,300 miles long, and essentially it's in thirds. We have about a third of the river is channelized in that channelized reach down below. About a third of the river is essentially impounded reservoir length, and then about a third is more naturalized Missouri River. Okay, so this slide shows the relative size of the 6 main stem dams compared to other Corps of Engineers reservoirs, and you can see that Fort Peck, Garrison, and Oahe are by far the largest Corps of Engineers reservoirs. And in terms of overall federal reservoirs, they are Garrison's number 3, Oahe's number 4, and Fort Peck is number 5 in our federal inventory. Together, these 6 reservoirs are the largest main stem reservoir system in North America. And another thing to note, in contrast to some of the other reservoir systems like the Columbia River, they get much more runoff than they have storage. We have more storage than typical runoff in our basin. So this slide shows the main stem reservoir storage capacity at each of the 6 reservoirs, and it's broken out into these different zones. And again, you can see that the upper 3 reservoirs are where most of the storage is. Also, it's where most of the flood control storage, although Fort Randall does have some flood storage that's used during big runoff events and also for local flood control. And then the carryover multiple use zone is also the biggest in the upper 3 reservoirs. And during long drought periods, that is where the major impacts are, is at those upper 3 reservoirs. For example, Big Bend and Gavin's Point are small reservoirs. They don't fluctuate very much typically, only within a band of like 1 or 2 feet. And so they don't get impacted much during long drought periods. And Fort Randall has a pretty steady operational plan during long drought periods. So the main impacts during long droughts are at Fort Peck, Garrison, and Oahe. Okay, if we took all the storage in all 6 of those reservoirs and added it up, we would get something that looks like this. It's what we call system storage, and it's broken out into different storage allocations. So we have the permanent pool on the bottom, and that's basically storage for sediment, and then also some minimum elevations for hydropower and water supply and things like that. Next zone up is the carryover multiple use zone. This zone is designed to meet the authorized purposes through a long drought like that of the 1930s. We would have reduced service to the authorized purposes, but it is designed to meet the authorized purposes during a long drought period. Next zone up is the annual flood control multiple use zone. This is the zone that we would prefer to operate in. We would like to start at the base of that zone at the beginning of the runoff season, and then as we capture water during the high runoff periods, we would go up into that zone, and then during the dry periods of the year, we would come down back towards the base of that zone, meeting the authorized purposes and evacuating that water prior to the next runoff season. And then the top zone there is the exclusive flood control zone, and as the name implies, that's reserved for the largest runoff events in the basin, and it's evacuated as quickly as we can when we get into that zone. You can see there the historic minimum, 2007 system storage reached 33.9 million acre feet. Okay, so in our basin, the Missouri River Basin, we have three different runoff components. We have the plains snowpack, the mountain snowpack, and then the rainfall. The plains snowpack typically melts off in March and April, and during those 2 months, we typically get about 25% of the runoff for the year. Mountain snowpack typically runs off in May, June, and July, and during those 3 months, we typically get about 50% of the runoff from the system. And then we have the rainfall during the remainder of the year. I'll talk a little bit more about each of these three in some upcoming slides. Our forecast for this year is 22.9 million acre feet. That's compared to a long-term average of 25.7 million acre feet. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and talk about some of the current conditions in the basin. This slide here shows observed precipitation and its statewide precipitation ranks. So the one on the left there is the September precipitation rank. The brown or sort of lighter colors there indicate that the precip was below the average. The sort of blues and greens there shows that it's above average. And so the number in the state is signifying what number in terms of whether it's dry to wet. So Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska had their driest year on record. That's shown by the 1 there. South Dakota was the 9th driest on record. Not quite as bad up here in North Dakota, the 36th driest, but you can see across most of the basin, Missouri River Basin, except for Montana, it's just been dry. The one on the right there is the last 3 months. Again, you can see it's mostly been dry across our basin. Nebraska is the 5th driest, Iowa is the 6th driest, Missouri the 11th driest on record. So just very dry conditions we've had pretty much since, about the late part of July into the remainder of the fall. The statewide rankings weren't prepared when I put these slides together, so this is just the percent of normal precipitation that we had during November. We did see some improvement in precipitation across the basin in November, still pretty dry in some of the upstream areas, but we did get some pretty good precipitation down in Nebraska and Kansas and parts of Iowa and Missouri. So a little bit of improvement there in the basin, but it didn't make up for what we've been, how dry it's been for the other months previous. Okay, we had some public meetings earlier in October, and the National Weather Service presented some information for us, and this is a slide from that. Just wanted to note that the NOAA released the 2024-2025 winter outlook back in October. The link is on the slide here if you're interested in that, or you can just go to your favorite search engine and just type U.S. winter outlook. For the basin, La Nina still expected to develop this winter, but it's likely weak. For the Missouri River Basin, the typical winter La Nina pattern leads to increased chances for below normal temperatures across the upper basin and increased chances for above normal snowpack in the northern Rockies. But again, as the Weather Service would tell you, there's no guarantees on this. You know, this can change quite a bit depending on what other types of winter activity we have besides La Nina. And these are the temperature and precipitation outlooks for December, January, and February. Temperatures on the left and precipitation is on the right. You can see the blue area in the upper part of the basin is leaning towards below normal temperatures for this winter. On the right there we have the precipitation, and you can see above average precipitation just kind of in Montana and parts of Wyoming there, and then what they call equal chances for most of the rest of the basin. Equal chances, just there's no strong indicators one way or another, just shows basically equal chance of above, below, or normal precipitation for those areas. Okay, this has the drought conditions shown on it. On the left is the drought monitor as of last week. This was probably updated this morning, but again, these slides were put together earlier than that. But you can see quite a bit of the basin is in some form of drought, from moderate up to exceptional, and just in general, even just dry conditions, abnormally dry, is, you know, almost the entire basin is under that. About 72% is in some form of drought. On the upper right is the drought monitor class change. In other words, this is how much change in the drought classification there's been in the last 6 months. So you can see across most of the basin, we've seen a degradation in the drought conditions over the past few months here. And then on the lower right is the seasonal drought outlook, and the brown area is basically showing that the drought is likely to continue, and the green areas is showing some improvement in drought likely, but you can see most of the basin is kind of covered in that continuation of the drought going forward here into the winter. I mentioned some of the runoff components in our basin, so we track those runoff characteristics here. And this one is Missouri River Basin snow water equivalent for the plains. This is the amount of water that's in the snow that's out there. The one on the right there is the plains snowpack as of December 5th. This year, you can see there's really not much going on in the basin. The gray color is basically a trace to 1 inch of water in the snow. So just not a lot of snow out there yet. Again, it's early though, so this could change a lot. The one on the lower left is sort of our peak snow from last year. Again, really not much snow up in North Dakota last year. Or Montana for that matter. We did have some pretty good snow down in parts of South Dakota into Nebraska, and down in the lower portion of the basin, which is a little unusual for the snow to be sort of focused down there rather than in the upper part of the basin. We also track the Missouri River Basin mountain snowpack. On the left side is the total snowpack above Fort Peck, and then we have the total from Fort Peck to Garrison on the right. The red line is the long-term average, and the blue is what we've seen so far this year. Again, it's almost too early to really say much about this, other than we are tracking it, and so far it's just falling below normal again this year. But it's early. We typically see the mountain snow peak about the middle of April. So still some time to change here. Okay, so all of those factors or basin conditions affect the runoff across the basin. This is Missouri River runoff above Sioux City. Calendar year forecast is 22.9 million acre feet. as I mentioned earlier. And this is the breakdown by month for this year. The blue bars are the observed, the red lines are the long-term average, and then we only have one bar left that's part of the forecast for this year. You can see if you look at like March and April, we didn't have much plain snowpack, as I mentioned, in the upper part of the basin, so both those blue lines are well below the long-term average. May, June, and July, even though the mountain snow was pretty low this past year, we got just enough rain while the snow was melting off that it provided, near normal in May and July, and then June was actually slightly above normal, but it was mainly due to precipitation events on top of the melting snow that kind of helped that out, because the mountain snow itself wasn't that significant. And then the remainder of the year, it's just been dry, and that's typically when we would, not get as much runoff anyway, so it's just been low runoff from pretty much August through November now. This shows the annual runoff above Sioux City since 1898. The yellow periods there are the long-term droughts, like the 1930s, 1950s. We had one from like about 1988 to 1982, and then the most recent drought from about 2000 to 2007. You can also see the big runoff events in 2011 and 2019. And then the forecast for this year, which is the red bar on the far right, 2024 forecast. And then you'll also see the 5 horizontal lines. These are what we call our runoff scenarios that we'll use in our annual operating plan studies. So we have the bottom one there is the lower the lower decile. So that's basically 10% of the years are below that, 90% of the years would be above it. Lower quartile, a fourth of the years would be below that, 3/4 above it, and so on. Median is basically 50-50. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, or I'll come back to it when I talk about the AOP studies just briefly. So you saw this slide earlier, the storage zones. Just wanted to jump back to this one and show where we're sitting in the zone. So we're at 50.3 million acre feet. It's actually a little bit less now this week. It's continuing to drop. It looks like we'll start next year's runoff season well below the base of the annual flood control and multiple use zone. It looks like right now it might be like about nearly 6 million acre feet down from the base there. Okay, so I'll just talk a little bit about fall and winter releases. So Gavin's Point Dam releases were reduced to the winter release rate starting November 23rd. So essentially flow support for navigation is ended. We're almost down to the 12,000, or the planned 12,000 release from the system for the winter. That winter release is based on the September 1st storage check, and again, it's a minimum rate of 12,000. We'll monitor channel and ice conditions between the reservoirs and downstream of Gavin's Point Dam this winter, and we'll make adjustments as needed during the winter. Expected average releases are shown below. That's based on the December 1st study there. I would note for Garrison, for example, we're on a 16,000 release right now. We'll stay on that 16,000 release until the river freezes in and the ice stabilizes. And then if conditions allow, then we'll start to work our way up towards a 22,000 CFS release for the winter. That 22,000 release helps provide some hydropower benefits during the high demand period of the winter. And then it also helps to balance storage in the upper 3 reservoirs prior to the start of next year's runoff season. Okay, so this just shows the Gavin's Point schedule that we had for the last couple weeks here. As I mentioned, we began reductions to end flow support on November 23rd. We stepped down 3,000 CFS per day until we got to 15,000, and then we paused there. and kind of slowed the release reductions down. That was just to give the water supply users a little bit of a chance to take a look at the lower releases. And within a few more days here, we'll be down to that winter release rate of 12,000 CFS. On the right side there, you can see the dates that flow support ended for navigation. Okay, so this shows the current reservoir levels, again, as of December 5th. Fort Peck and Oahe are, about 7 to 11 feet below the base of their flood control zones right now. Garrison is just a little bit below the base of its flood control zone. So over the next 3 months, we'll adjust the releases from these upper 3 projects to get these better in balance prior to the start of next year's runoff season. That's kind of what I was talking about with the winter releases. It provides a hydropower benefit, but also balances the storage in these reservoirs prior to next year's runoff. Fort Randall's reservoir is also drawn down right now, and that's pretty typical. Fort Randall, we draw that reservoir down in the fall to elevation 1337, and then it's refilled over the winter, and that again gives us some extra hydropower generation. That reservoir will return to an elevation of 1350 near the end of February. Okay, this slide shows the system storage. The black line is the actual system storage going back to the beginning of the year. The blue line is the system storage based on that median runoff condition that I mentioned earlier, and then the 2 dashed red lines are the upper and lower decile. And then the draft AOP and the final AOP will have information on the upper and lower quartile as well. I just left those off here to make this a little easier to read. You'll also see the 3 green triangles. Those are the system storage checks that I mentioned earlier. So the March 15th storage checks, that's the service level for the first part of the navigation flow support. July 1st storage checks, that's the service level for the second half of the navigation flow support, and also the season length for flow support. And then the September 1st storage checks, that's the Gavin's Point winter release levels. So you can see here, we just barely got up into the annual flood control zone this year, system storage. With median runoff condition next year, we would see something similar, just slightly higher if we had the median runoff. But again, it's very, very dependent on what kind of runoff we get. If we get a big runoff year, we could see quite a bit of recovery in the reservoir system. But if we have a drier year, it could go down. And you see right now, it's hard to see, but the black line is tracking down by the lower decile line right now. So far we just haven't seen good conditions in the fall. So it's definitely leaning towards the drier conditions right now. And this is just a similar slide. There's also Fort Peck and Oahe are in the draft AOP. I just included Garrison here because we're, of course, in Bismarck, and that's of more interest. But you can see, again, Garrison, the black line, we did have a pretty good runoff into Garrison this year during the mountain snowpack because of pretty good rain during that period. But again, the black line is tracking along that lower decile line right now. So it's just not looking good as we get into, start going into next year. But again, it's very dependent on runoff that we get from here on out. With the median runoff condition, we would see a pool elevation similar to what we had this year. Okay, so I'm going to talk just briefly about the reservoir operations in 2025, and this is based on the annual operating plan. We should be posting the final annual operating plan here within a couple weeks, hopefully by Christmas or so. Get that out there on our website. In terms of some of the authorized project purpose, flood control, all the scenarios show starting next year's runoff season below the base of the annual flood control zone. And as I mentioned, we're tracking along the lower decile line right now, so it looks like we would start next year's runoff season next year's flow support, about 4,000 CFS below full service, if that continues. Flooding can still occur due to downstream rainfall. That's particularly true downstream of Gavin's Point, where we have long travel times below the reservoir system, and also a large uncontrolled drainage area below the system of reservoirs. Navigation, intermediate service for median and below runoff. I already mentioned though that, looks like we'll probably start about 4,000 CFS below full service next year. Looking out to the July 1st storage check, again, very dependent on runoff here. We'd have full service or greater with a 10-day extension for upper quartile and upper decile runoff. Full service flow support for the median runoff condition, and reduced service for lower quartile and lower decile, ranging from about 3,300 to 4,700 CFS below full service. Full-length flow support season for median and below runoff, looking out into next year. So no shortening of the navigation season under any of the runoff scenarios. Some of the other project purposes here: hydropower annual generation forecast of 9.1 billion kilowatt hours. That's for the median runoff condition. Recreation water supply, water quality and irrigation. So we already talked about the Gavin's Point winter release of 12,000 CFS for this winter. That's a water conservation measure. Some access issues possible depending on runoff. You saw those wide range of elevations and storages that we could get next year, depending on the runoff. So, if we get those lower conditions, we would expect probably some issues for marinas and rec areas, and some water supply issues or intake issues for irrigation, some of those types of things. Water quality will be monitored at the reservoirs next year, especially if we start drifting down in those lower runoff conditions. And last thing, fish and wildlife, including endangered species, will favor Fort Peck and Oahe during the fish spawn in the spring if runoff is not sufficient to keep all three reservoirs rising. Ideally, we would like to see all three of them rise during that fish spawn period. But if that's not possible, then we'll favor Fort Peck and Oahe by adjusting releases at Fort Peck and Garrison to try to keep those rising. Typical summer bird operations for the piping plover for median and lower runoff. And if anybody was tracking the Fort Peck flow test, which we did run this year, there will be no Fort Peck flow tests for the pallid sturgeon next year. As we gather information, there's quite a bit of data collection still going on from that flow test, and we'll be looking at that as we get into the spring here. But bottom line is no Fort Peck flow test for the sturgeon next year. Okay, just last couple slides here, just a little bit of plugs for information on our website. There's just all sorts of information. The link is on the bottom there. You can look at current conditions, reservoir levels, all that kind of stuff. You can look at our short and long-term forecasts, our river forecasts, and things like that. So that's a good source of information for people. And then this last slide here is what we call our weekly update. We started doing this a few years back, and quite a few people like it. It's just got 4 quadrants. These are changed depending on what's going on in the basin. There's just a variety of information if you just bookmark that and just to kind of check where we're sitting with different things. And that's usually updated on Tuesday morning every week, so that's a good source of a quick update if you're interested. And that's really all I had for information to present, so I don't know how you want to take it from here.
Say thank you. Do we have any quick questions for Mike up here? Go ahead.
Do you have any information about the proposed work on Missouri that was excluded water?
I do not have any information on that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Chris. Thank you, Mike. Next, we're going to hear from, I'll introduce them both. We have Chris Barke with WAWS, Western Area Water Supply Project or Authority, will give us an update on WAWS, and also Duane DeKrey with Garrison Diversion Conservancy District, and Duane will give us an update on the Red River Valley Water Supply. I have noted that Chris will be up here first, so Chris. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Chris Barke. I'm with Western Area Water Supply. I'll provide the update here for you guys. A little background. WAWS was created in 2011 by the state of North Dakota to help facilitate distributing rural water or water out to rural communities in northwest North Dakota. We have 3 member entities that operate in 5 counties. Majority of the water served is through the Missouri River system into the Williston water treatment plant. R&T Water does supplement their own groundwater through their water treatment plant to help push more out towards like Traill County in that area. This is a little bit of where we sat when we were first created. 200, about a little over 1,500 people being served in the rural community with drinking water, and now we're up in the close to 6,000 total connections, a 250% growth over that time span. Overview map of all the pipe we've put in the ground. The orange lines this year will be phase 7 projects, phase 8 projects that'll be going in this construction season of 2025. So we got System 2 south in McKenzie County. It's an expansion project that'll serve 100 plus users, an expansion project around Williston area, another 100 plus users on that one, and up we'll be connecting Battleview McGregor, rural area, and the 2 towns themselves with water as well. So another 100 users on that project. We've in total installed 3,200 miles of pipe, rural distribution and transmission. We operate 26 ground storage reservoirs, both in-ground, concrete and glass fused, bolted to steel. Those range in size from 50,000 gallons to 5 million. 39 pump stations and 5 elevated towers. Historically funded through local cost share through the member entities, and then grants from the state of North Dakota. The $722 million does include this year's construction for these projects here. We did today just open a bid on the phase 2 transmission main. So that one is gonna go, and we'll have System 2 base rural distribution expansion, East Williston, and the Battleview McGregor projects that I had spoke about earlier. These projects are either being funded for construction or being completed this year. We did also just finish the water treatment plant intake remediation road on the road. We had some sloughing going, and we came in, and it was pretty cool to see. They took these giant nails and shoved them into the ground to help keep the erosion from taking out the road to the water treatment plant. So looking beyond, this is future expansion for the projects that we have into 2027. A lot of this is geared towards the water treatment plant, Wilson's water treatment plant. We have some intake, some pre-sedimentation improvements that we're looking at doing, and a few other rural distribution projects as well. In total, in the next year or two, we'll be doing close to 525 miles and connecting in 550 more people. The Wilson water treatment plant expansion there will add another 14 million gallons per day being treated, and also upgrades to R&T's water treatment plant will add another million gallons a day. So our system will be planned to increase to 37 million gallons total. Questions?
Well, good afternoon. Have you reached your death by PowerPoint yet? Well, it's good to be here, and I'm glad every year we're able to contribute to the conference. So we'll get started. So the Red River Valley Water Supply Project has always been a long-term emergency water supply and an economic development initiative. And those are kind of the two tenets that the project has been built around since its inception. So the project benefits, I think it's pretty tough. I have to look over here, I guess. Is supplements inadequate surface water supplies during a drought. If none of you or some of you maybe remember the 30s drought, but the Red River had zero flow in it for 5 months in 1934. And so when you consider that that's the major source of water of our major city in North Dakota, it kind of gives you a reason why we need to keep going on this project. It also supplements groundwater supplies. You'll see a slide later that shows that North Dakota's pretty much got all the easy, cheap water out of the ground, and anything further out of the ground is probably going to be more expensive and hard to get. It provides industrial supply. Right now, demand exceeds industrial supply in North Dakota. We're one of the most agricultural states in the nation, and percentage-wise, we add very little value to all those crops that we're growing. And most of agriculture processing tends to be water-heavy. And so this will allow us to increase that in the state of North Dakota and add to the state's bottom line. It also mitigates fluctuations in water supply in North Dakota. If you've ever looked at the Palmer Drought Index, it pretty much shows that North Dakota is never average. We're either awash in water or we're begging for water. And so it'll help mitigate those two circumstances. And then, of course, if you have water, you always have the possibility of other economic benefits. So this is what the project looks like now, 125 miles of spiral steel welded line. It's a 6-foot pipe, 72 inches. It's concrete lined, and the minimum cover over the top of the pipe is 7 feet. And so in 2024 dollars, it's about a $1.26 billion project. So it's a pretty heavy lift for the state of North Dakota, and it's a heavy lift for the users that are paying their 25%. So this is the final regional water supply in the state of North Dakota. The other three systems continue to build out and continue to expand and serve people. We're looking at another 8 years of construction if we stay on track what the legislature said last session. And so the Red River Valley Water Supply would be the largest regional system, and it would also have the ability to serve about 50% of the population in North Dakota. So the project is a complete project with the state of North Dakota, Garrison Diversion. We're trying to get federal funds. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the Lake Agassiz Water Authority is a complete partner with Garrison Diversion. Lake Agassiz Water Authority has 3 committees. Every task order before we spend any money goes through one of those 3 committees, and it is approved by LAWA. And then it comes over to the Garrison Board and our Red River Committee in Garrison goes through it, and then they recommend what we're going to do at the board level. And so we've got 2 boards that approve everything before the construction or whatever money we're spending happens. So this is kind of the long tortured history of Garrison Diversion. It's all started in 1944 with the Flood Control Act, Pick-Sloan Plan. What's amazing to me is the United States was still in a world war in 1944, and we had a Congress that could actually pass a major water project while we had a war going on. And we don't see that kind of cooperation anymore in DC, I don't think. So in 1965, or 1955 rather, I'm not sure why these slides aren't coming out like this, but in 1955, the North Dakota legislature formed the Garrison Diversion, and we were to be the paymaster for the federal government. And then in 1967, the construction of the principal supply work started, and that'd be the Snake Creek Pumping Plant and the McCluskey Canal. And then if you remember about that time, we got into trouble with Canada and environmental groups, and the project got stopped. They even formed a commission in Washington, D.C. to study it to see what the outcome should be. And so in 65 was the original Dakota Water Resources Act, and then it was reformulated again in 86. And then that was after we had all the problems. And so in 86, they came up with the MRI program to compensate North Dakota for the fact that the program never got done. So in the year 2000, they indexed that money, and it was $200 million, and it was indexed, and I think we're somewhere over $364 more that we have contributed to water projects in the state of North Dakota with the help of the State Water Commission. And then in 2003, we kind of thought the project was going to get going because the federal Congress had said that we only needed to do 2 things and we could get going on the federal project, and that was we had to do an environmental impact study, we had to do a needs and options report. Both of those were very positive for the project, but we were never able to get that record of decision, and you don't have a federal project unless you get that a record of decision, which never came. So in about 2007, or 11 rather, then Governor Hoeven, now Senator Hoeven, turned it into a state project. And the thinking in the legislature and with the governor was that this project is so critical for the state of North Dakota. The East Coast population is booming, and we have a lot of industrial needs we want to do. And so this project has to carry on, and we'll make it a state project. So then we went back to work and started planning for it as a state project. So we actually began construction then in 2020. And while we were beginning construction, the way the federal rules were, with no record of decision, we couldn't get any federal funds. And so we hired a lobbying firm in Washington, D.C. To see if they couldn't put a legal strategy together that we could somehow be able to use the canal. And part of that legal strategy was the state had to spend enough money so that they could prove to the federal government that we were serious about this project and we were going to build it. And so we built the intake on the Missouri River. We built the outlet 6 miles south of Cooperstown, and we put about a mile of pipe in by Cooperstown. And after we did that, then we were actually able to get the record of decision in 2021 after we had started construction. And so that was it's a very big plus for the state of North Dakota. It'll save the state and the users about $300 million in construction costs. And it'll also save, $8 million or so in pumping costs because the lift out of the river is about 600 feet and the lift out of the McCluskey Canal is about 200 feet. So this is, you've seen this already today or yesterday. Andrea showed you this. It shows that pretty much the easy water and groundwater in the state of North Dakota is pretty much appropriated out. So this just shows the importance of the Missouri River to the state of North Dakota. In a 30-style drought, every one of those tributaries or rivers on their own will not flow. And the lowest flow observed in the Missouri River in the depths of the 30s was 13,000 cubic feet per second. So when you know that when we're at maximum flow, we'll have 165 cubic feet per second, you really can't even measure the amount of water that we're taking out of the river. It's such a small amount compared to the volume of the river. So 95% of North Dakota's surface water is in the Missouri River. The total amount of Missouri River water that North Dakota is asking for would be about 0.5%, and there would be 99.5% of the Missouri River left after the project, and it just amounts to a drop in the bucket. If you were to set a 5-gallon bucket on the table in front of you and fill it with water and say that's the Missouri River, you'd set a thimble beside it, and that's what North Dakota is trying to get out of the river, which is less water than we contribute to the river. So to get our intake into the Missouri River, we had to do some modeling for the Corps of Engineers for the permit. And after that modeling, we found out that in the 40s, if we had built this project right away, that it would have been used in every decade since then. So it's not really looking at the future, we're also looking at the past, that if we'd had it, we would have been using it. So right now, we're trying to go out and get users to sign up for the pipe. I'll just state up front that the pipe is sold. I mean, it was designed for 165 cubic feet per second, and whatever is left over when the small users have finally decided what they're going to sign up for, Fargo and Grand Forks has committed to take the rest of the water. And so we are doing our best trying to market it to the smaller users, try to figure out what their future needs will be and what they could possibly get for industry in their city. And so we've been out there doing that very steady recently, and it's looking good. We're having a lot of signups. So we try to keep it affordable, and of course we will benefit up to 50% of the population of North Dakota. Even at $1.2 billion, it's cost effective for the state, because without the project in a 30-style drought, the economic impact to the state of North Dakota over 10 years is $33.6 billion. So even at $1.2 billion, it's still a bargain for the state to finish the project. And of course, we are committed to good stewardship of dollars and of the land, and we want to also enhance the environment. And I really don't know why our slides are doing this, but doesn't look good, but normally it looks pretty good. And I would point out that with landowners, we got about 160 landowners that we're having to work with to get the pipe in the ground. And right now, we're down to 2 holdouts. So I think we've done a pretty good job of working with landowners. So we're working closely with Bank of North Dakota, because the users, of course, don't have the kind of cash on hand that's needed to buy their part of the pipe. And so the North Dakota has a water infrastructure loan fund at the Bank of North Dakota, and they continue to put money in there to back the small users. And you can't see it, but it's about a 40-year term at 2% to the users. So it's very good terms for the users, and then of course the state's paying the other 75%. So as we were going through this, and of course some of the smaller users are hesitant to take on a financial burden that's, the project isn't even finished yet, and it's if it's on the path it's on, it's going to be 8 more years before it's finished, and they have to start paying for it now. And so Fargo and Grand Forks stepped up to the plate and said that any small user that signs up for the project 10 years after it's functional they will buy them out if they decide that it's not for them. So really, it's pretty hard to say that we can't afford the project because you have an out if you're considering buying it. So Fargo and Grand Forks really stepped up to the plate and have really made the project much more available to some of the smaller users. So this is just kind of a slide that shows us where we've been talking to people. The black dots are hard nose, and then we're, then there's various ones that we have some signed up, and we have some that want to sign up, and they're kind of on the verge of it, but they haven't nailed down exactly how they're going to pay for it and those types of things. We never envisioned counties signing up in the beginning, and now we found out that there's interest in the counties signing up. And so now we've gone back and we've started talking to counties, and especially in the southeastern part of the state, the counties are actually nominating for water and are going to buy into the project. So this is the slide that shows what we were appropriated last biennium by the legislature, $180 million, and then they also put legislative intent in for $953 million. That would be the state's share to finish it in a 10-year build. And that, of course, that 180 has to be met with 25% by the locals. So that's another $60 million. So we had $240 million to work with this biennium to do construction. And so it just shows we obligated, and we have obligated all $240 million. When we talk to legislators, and you have too, they don't like carryover dollars, and so we've made a point to show that the legislature that we have obligated all $240 million of last biennium. So this is what the 23-25 work plan looks like. We have no contractors on the ground today. They all left last week, but we had 3 contractors working all summer right in the Carrington area, and then we've continued with engineering to get pipe shovel ready and to keep the project moving if funding becomes available. And so I mentioned we were approved for $240 million. State share was 180, local 60, and that's to install 27 miles of line. We are at like 17.8 miles, so we're really close to being on track to finish up the contracts on time. So this is construction, and also shows what some of the contracts that we have completed. Of course, we completed the outfall and the 5A. They put in the last pipe just a week or 2 ago, and to finish that contract up, they're not done. They have to come back and do some restoration and everything, but they had some really wet ground that they were working in, so it was quite a milestone when they finished up. And then we've got one west of town and one east of town laying pipe. Whoops, how do I go back? So this is kind of a visual of where the contractors are at. 5B, which is Garney, was a 2-year contract. They'll be on their 4th year next year. They did get all their pipe in the ground this year. They've been having some terrible ground to work in. 30 inches of rain this year. It's just really hard to get pipe in the ground when you have those kinds of conditions. Both Oscar Renda and Karstensen are in drier, higher ground. Karstensen actually didn't start until almost the middle or the latter part of July because they had a contract down in Texas that they had to work on, and it never rains in Texas, but it rained on their project all the time. So they were delayed getting up to North Dakota. And so when it rained on them in North Dakota, it was nothing new. They were used to that. So that kind of gives you, we're at 45, 41%. So this is contract 5B in Foster County, 9 miles, 72-inch line. We had the bore under Highway 281 and Red River and Valley Western Railroad, and that was a big bore. And this picture just kind of shows the pipe lined up. Some of the topsoil's been stripped and they're ready to start digging. This thing keeps jumping. This is just another construction picture. removal of topsoil. We hired a firm to come in and train the people that run the construction equipment so they understood what the difference between topsoil, subsoil, and other soil was. To get the soil to be productive after you put the pipe in the ground, it's very important that you get the right soil back in the right zones. And so we've been pretty particular with that with contractors. And so there's just a picture of them stripping topsoil. Installing pipe, that's a 25-foot cut. We've kind of made them a commitment to landowners that we will try to put the appurtenances on quarter lines and section lines, and so that makes a difference how you engineer the pipe. Some pipes get pretty deep to accomplish that, but we think that's part of being good neighbors. That's a 25-foot cut. We only got a 150-foot easement, so you can see how they have to bench the other soil in the piles to get the pipe in the ground, and they also have to haul a lot of other soil off. Then we work with local landowners to do a lot of the restoration. We hire them, and the contractors hire them and their equipment to prepare the subsoil and I don't know, you call it fracking or whatever, and then put the topsoil on top of it. We've got some crops on reclaimed land this year that were just as good as the crops right beside it. So it does make a difference if you make it a priority to restore the best you can. This is just a before and after. The topsoil stripped and they're ready to start putting the pipe in the ground on 150 feet easement. And the photo on the right is after the pipe is in the ground and the land's restored and it has a crop on top of it. And so we've actually had farmers in the area tell us that we're doing a really good job of restoration. This is just to kind of show you the conditions that some of the pipe went in the ground in. It's extremely wet. Water dewatering became a lot bigger issue than we thought it was. We have 3 and 4 miles of pipe in ditches running to lakes and natural drains to get rid of the water. And of course, every time it rained, you had to pump that water away on top of the water you were already pumping away. And so that just kind of shows you how tough some of the construction was. This is just another contractor, another picture, another of the water that they had to go through with the pipe lined up. And this is just the contractor putting in the pipe. You see the pipe, and there's a manhole on that piece of pipe that will be above ground. So by the end of 2024, 8 construction contracts with a total value of $260 million will have been awarded. By mid-2025, more than 100 miles of pipe will be 100% designed. This is just, you've seen this before, that's the intake over on the Missouri River while construction was going on the left, and now it's completed on the right. There was some rumblings about that not being used. Washburn has gotten their RIC grant from FEMA, and they are going to utilize the intake, and so we still have more room, but it's not going to be a stranded asset. This is the outlet south of Cooperstown. You can see the Cheyenne River in the upper left there. This is above the high ordinary watermark, so it's above federal regulation. And that just goes into a tributary of the Cheyenne and then runs into the Cheyenne down to Lake Ashtabula, and then the Bald Hill Dam is the regulating reservoir. This contract is complete. That's the picture of the first pipe that went into the ground, had everybody's logo on it. We had a really big crowd of legislators and people there from the Carrington area to see that happen. So we've gotten quite a ways, done quite a bit of work since then, but we like to show people the start. So now this is the legislative part of this legislative talk. So this was the spend schedule that we presented to the legislature 2 years ago. And any of you that's ever dealt with the legislature, understand that one legislature cannot be provide to a future legislature what they're going to spend. So This is 2 years ago's legislators' idea of what the spend schedule was going to be for the 10 years. And so we're in the 25, 27, you can't see it very well, but that's 221 million. The governor's budget, that isn't going to be the governor, had 172 million in there. And so we'll see how it comes out this session, but everybody else and all their water projects are in the same position we are, is kind of wait and see what the legislature and the governor does. So that just shows you that with the 221 million, and then the number of users, the increase in number of users makes it more affordable, and we'll continue to fund the project and hope to be completed in the 10-year build schedule. There is a federal bill that came out of committee that Senator Hoeven put in. There's $454 million in there for the state of North Dakota and Garrison for the Red River project. And it's a $1.something billion bill, so there's money for the tribes in there, there's money for the state of North Dakota, the MRI program. The MRI program is going to run out of money in 25. So it's very important that we get this passed. We did get notice this morning that Missouri has put a hold on it, and so we don't know if we're going to be able to get it attached to the defense authorization. There are a couple other bills with lesser importance out there that could be attached to if we can finally get Missouri to play ball. But the senator is talking to other senators, and so we'll see where that goes. But we were kind of disappointed to hear that, but it was not all unexpected. With that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions if you have them. Can't really see us, so.
Any questions for Duane? Gotta love Missouri. That's a tough one. That really is. So Duane and Chris, thanks again. Appreciate it. So now we have community development and rural prosperity. In January of this year, the Governor Burgum announced the creation of the Office of Community Development and Rural Prosperity within the North Dakota Department of Commerce. Here to give us an introduction to this new office is Marie Effertz. Maria is the director of the North Dakota Commerce Division of Community Services. She has spent the last 25 years exploring the main streets and side streets of North Dakota's rural areas. She knows the best part of rural North Dakota, besides the great food and people, is the imagination and passion rural North Dakotas have for their towns and their state. As director, she helps a team who manages the Office of Community Development and Rural Prosperity, EDA Placemaking Grant Program, and HUD and Department of Energy programs distributed by the state. So with that, I'd welcome up Maria.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, as there's my day. I ended up starting the day with a sick kid, and so I missed most of this. Can you hear me okay? Are we doing good? All right. My name is Maria Effertz. As beautiful introduction there, I have been part of the water world since I was fairly young. My first real job was at Garrison Diversion. Warren Jameson decided to take a risk on me, told me 6 months later that he probably was going to fire me 5 times, but he stayed with me, which I am extremely grateful, because that knowledge of water has played an enormous, enormous part of what we do in community development, what I do personally, what I remember. You talk about the federal government, and you talk about, I remember Warren Jameson telling me that NEPA is a 1-page document. NEPA regulations are this thick. So never think that you have to just take what the federal government says. You have an opportunity to make that fight, make that point for what you believe should happen. But today we're going to talk about community development. The North Dakota Office of Community Development and Rural Prosperity, as mentioned, was started by Governor Burgum in January. It actually is using the pillars of the Main Street Initiative. Now, you're all going, what are community development? What does that have to do with anything? Well, it has to do with a lot, because everything about what we do in the state is going to lead back to community. Mr. DeKrey talked about putting that pipeline in the ground. Well, you don't put that pipeline in the ground unless you actually have workers to put the pipeline in the ground. And you don't have workers unless you have a place for them to stay. And you don't have a place for them to stay unless your community actually has something that you want them to be there for and to be part of. And so when they said, hey, do you want to come talk to the water convention? Number one, I love water. But number two, you as a body are extremely critical in the future of the state in community. You may think, oh, I just serve on a board, or I just do this job, or I'm part of this activity. But unless you can go back and help your community become an essential part of the state, if you can't help them grow, we don't have anything. North Dakota in the census, the 2020 census, we have an increased population, but there were only 15 communities in the state that increased population. So you think about that, where you're all from. I said, I'm from Velva, live in Velva, now I work remote. And they said, and somebody said, well, what about your population? I said, well, we lost 4 people. And they go, oh, that was good. No, it wasn't. It was not good to lose 4 people in a growing state. And so we all have to go back and work on communities. And so what we've come up with is a community of the future. And so what we're going to be working on the next 5 years, because if any of you are involved in your community, you know that attitudes don't change overnight. And a lot of us, hopefully not in this room, but a lot of us, when we're asked about changing our community or evolving our community, adding people to our community that maybe have different attitudes, different thoughts, different looks than us, it's always those people. So we're going to take the next 2 to 5 years to take a look at how we can do that and why. What's our goals? What's our outcomes? This says confidential draft at the top only because the fact of we're still in the process of rolling it out. And we have a community in mind that's going to be coming online here at the end of this year. And I'm really careful, because a lot of times in government, especially commerce, they say, well, you said you were going to do that. And I'm like, we're going to. We're just working on it. We're just working on it. But why do we do this? And I apologize. I didn't realize this was going to get kind of messed up here on it when I sent it over. But, what is it that we're doing? We're looking at, why we would do this. Increase the GDP. Increase our school enrollment. Take a look at what we're going to do. Increase the business ownership. We're losing businesses as people age out. That local lumber yard, that local grocery store, as they decide they want to actually retire, there's nobody there back to buy them. So how do we help entrepreneurship? How do we help students and youth become part of our communities and part of what they think and they believe is next? So how do we get there? How do we evolve and change communities? It's not easy, never will be, but we have to look at it as a collaborative approach. Right now we're working with the arts philanthropic organization, State Arts Council, a nonprofit that has funding through a variety of sources, and our own little scrap together funding in North Dakota. But our biggest collaborative approach is going to be community. What we're asking communities to do is we need you as a community, you as a member of the state. If you say, I want to be part of my growing community, we need 5 to 7 people who are willing to commit to 5 years. It's not easy. It's not a quick approach. But we want to create that storytelling. So when new people come to your community, they don't necessarily, okay, I got to tell a story. Okay, so when we had some new people move into Velva, and they were great, and they were wonderful, and they came from a similar town in North Dakota. They actually came from Newtown. And I said to my son, I said, you have new kids in your class? And he goes, yeah, they're the white kids. And I'm like, oh, white kids from Newtown. He goes, no, they're really white, and they were super pale. But that's how we identify new kids. So we need to figure out, how do we help the new kids in the community be identified as part of our community, not just necessarily the kids from Newtown. So year 1 is a lot of work. Year 1 is a commitment and a lot of work through together, finding what it is that your community has that makes you special. And then identifying how we share that with the rest of the state. And then it's reviewing and updating. But we also have to take a look at how do we maximize the investments. I talked about that gas station or that grocery store, or that lumber yard that's leaving. There's a lot of money in our communities. A lot of times it's hidden under mattresses. So how do we create investments in community that gives a sense of responsibility that you shop local, number one, you've invested, but then so it makes a reasonable sense so that the investment is a long-term investment also to pay off as we go. So it's a continual updating. As I said, it's year 6. It takes a while to get to that, what we're labeling community of the future. So what are the right ingredients? Again, apologies for this not holding up the way I had hoped it would. But the foundational foundational needs of any community, and some of these are highlighted because some of these are really the hard ones to hit, where we went through and we asked communities, and this is the first step we do. What do you need in your community to survive and thrive? So people have said, dentists. They've said, we need diverse workforce. We need financial institutions. We need critical infrastructure. I bet if you sat down and you thought, okay, what do I have in my community, especially a rural community, you could go, I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Great. I sat next to a gal on the plane, headed to Minneapolis last month, and her family was her husband's family was originally from the northwest corner of the state. He was a pilot for Delta. They were headed home to visit, and then they were just for a short while and coming back. She said during COVID, they actually moved back to the northwest part of the state. And she was from Minneapolis. She fell in love with it. And she's like, why don't we stay here? Why are we moving back to Minneapolis? Well, and she said, we have everything we need here. The problem is when you went through that list and decided we have everything we need here, she had a child with some physical disabilities. She would have to drive 2 hours to get to any services that had that. So what she needed, they had health care, but they didn't have all the pieces to the health care. Now, if that healthcare system would have taken a look at how can they do things remotely, how can they pull in other opportunities? Are there more than one person in town that needs those services? So it's challenging what you have already. You might have a grocery store, but does your grocery store carry just a few different things that your new employees and your new workers in the state would want? And then we get into attraction and retention, all the things. So that's where we help walk through that. This is a pretty cool one. It's not going to show up as great as I wanted it, but this is a pretty cool one using the self-actualization scales. This is one where you say, okay, we fill in those first needs first, which is over on your left-hand side. And those are the things you think about that you need. So we took that and took it back to a community. What do you need first? What do you need second? And what do you need third? And actually, the first thing that you need in a community is the ability to tell your story. You need all those other things we've been talking about. That's what we're going to work on. But you come together as a community. What's your story that people can buy into? What's your story that says, I want to live in this community? Wishick. Okay, if I said Wishick, what's Wishick? Come on, somebody. Sauerkraut capital. Anybody can buy that story, right? Whether you like sauerkraut or not, you can buy that story. Whether you're old and been there 100 years or whether you're brand new. So challenge you, go home, think about your community. What's your story? What is it that you can promote and go on? Then the next thing is, who are your stakeholders? This is what we ask also. Who are those people, both internally and externally, that you need to be at the table? Think about that as you try to tell your story. So some of the best practices we found from North Dakota communities, communication. How do you communicate? How do you get out there and talk to the city? Not only talk to others outside of your city, but how do you talk to each other about what your community is? I mean, how many of you have said, well, there's nothing to do here, whether you're a kid or not? How many of you heard people say, there's nothing to do here? Yeah, so you're nodding. Yep, I saw that. Is there really nothing to do here? Or are you thinking outside of the box and what can be done here? can you go snowshoeing most anywhere? Well, not as much snow yet, but yeah, you can. That's a cool thing for a lot of people. So instead of communicating what you thought you knew, think about what others see when they look at your community. What are your areas of attractions? What is your diverse industry that you can grow on? And then what is your services that maybe you have that nobody else has? Or what I challenge you also to do is think about, what does your region have? We don't all have to have the same things. We've done that for how many years? Where we've fought with our neighbors. I went down to Ashley many, many years ago. Sorry, Ashley, that I'm picking on you. And I met a gal. And she's like, well, yeah, you know, I've moved here 12 years ago. And I'm like, well, hey, you're almost a native. She goes, oh, no, I'm not from here. I'm from 12 miles away. I am not from Ashley. and that we see that a lot. We see that where, you know, the community, you don't feel you're part of it, number one. But then you also feel that you have to compete. There's no reason to compete. And we have a symposium coming in February where we're going to bring in people in very rural areas who have found success on finding their specialties and putting it together and then putting those pieces together when they talk to the world. So this is, again, very busy, very like tiny, I apologize, but it's got a lot of characteristics on what a thriving community would be. And so this is what we bring. We talk to you about that. And then we talk about how to do it. You know, what are the pieces that you need to do? What is the investment strategy that's unique to your community? Powers Lake, North Dakota. I didn't get a chance to go up. The team just went up Tuesday. But Powers Lake, anybody from Powers Lake before I misspeak? Okay, good. I can tell a story and they won't know. All right, Powers Lake, North Dakota. Housing's huge issues, everybody. Powers Lake, North Dakota, when I was there probably 10 years ago, I was chatting about what they do in housing. They created Investment LLC where everybody put in $10,000. Big chunk of change. They used the local lumberyard. They built a house. They used the proceeds on that house to build another house. And they built another house. The thing about it, I'm like, well, that's great. And he says, but you can't get out of the LLC, basically, until so many years. And then if you get out, you only get your investment out. You only get your original investment in. I'm like, well, that's really cool. I said, well, how many people have actually got out of it? And he said, one family, their dad died, they wanted their money. He said, other than that, everybody left their money in. They saw the value of unique investments to be able to do something. How do you pull your dollars together to think outside of what the box would be to make something that works? You know, and use what we have, use the resources, use the investments that are there. I'm gonna have to look at this one because it got so messed up. Apologies again on that. These are the things that we're taking a look at bringing into a community of the future. Again, working with a private philanthropic organization, working with a local nonprofit and the little bit of resources that we have. What do we bring in? How do we create that community mentor? How do we create that opportunity for a community? This is a long haul. This isn't anything that I'm going to say, well, we're going to change the culture in North Dakota overnight, because as you know, it doesn't change overnight. There's a reason there's only 15 communities in the state that have grown. A lot of it's our own fault. I'm going to say that. I've worked in community development probably longer than I should have sometimes, and I would go into a community and say, you know, what's great about your community? And they would struggle to say what's great about their community. Couldn't tell the story. And then we would have new people that would move in to the town. And from Velva, we had Dots Pretzels. We had Dots Pretzels running 3 shifts. So there was a lot of people in town that weren't from Velva. I don't know how many times I heard or saw people say, those people. We didn't welcome them. They didn't feel like they were part of the community. They wanted to be part of the community. Believe me, I talked to many of them. They wanted to be part of the community, but they didn't feel that they felt they were those people. How many times have we said that? Those people. So if we're going to survive, if we're going to grow, if we're going to become communities of the future, the first thing we have to do is want to. I've also been to many communities where they look at me and go, yeah, we're fine. You know, losing 4 people is good. You know, that isn't going to solve it. We're not going to be able to do it. So as you go back and as you start looking at what you're doing in your small towns, your medium-sized towns, your big towns, as you look at your resources and as you look at what your story is, don't be afraid to start saying positive things about your community to your neighbors, your friends, your family. Don't be afraid to be the one person maybe that says, it's okay to live here. How do we get together and make it different? How do we become a community of the future? We're happy to help in any way we can. We've got a small but mighty team. We've got resources in terms of expertise, and we're trying to drive some resources both through the government and through philanthropic and private organizations so that we can come to your town and hopefully help you get to the next steps, working with the partners that we have. I know that was probably shorter than you wanted, but I know that if I get done early, you get to social hour early. And if I remember water users, social hours were pretty good. So I could take any questions if anybody has any for the little bit of time. Any questions for Marty? We're headed into legislative session. So as you all go out there and battle for your water projects, don't forget there's community development projects there too. Commerce has several different things that are in both the governor's budget today, and we'll find out what's in the governor's budget next week. But we're intending to continue the good fight to keep North Dakota growing. Thank you all. Oh, thank you, Mary.
Well, yes, thank you, Maria. And believe it or not, I was working at Southwest Water Authority when she was working for Garrison Diversion Conservancy District, so our paths have crossed. I would like to remind you that we have our silent auction going on in the back of the room, so please go take a look and try to bid up some of our wonderful gifts we have. Good ideas for Christmas. We also have our 50/50 raffle tickets and grand prize tickets available at the registration desk. We'll announce those as winners tonight at 6:30 at the banquet. The money we raise from all of that will go to help our Water Education Foundation Dushinsky-Jameson Water Resource Scholarship Fund. At this time, we're going to take a coffee break, and I hope to see you back here around 3:45. Thank you.
Fired up, I touch the sky when you hold me. Baby, we burn, just passing time, but you don't know me. You're the only love that I know of.
Some FM area diversion construction sites are shutting down for winter, but the project still had some notable progress. I'm Tom Fuchs, Senior Construction Manager for the Metro Flood Diversion Authority, with this month's construction update. We start the overview at the Red River structure, the largest of the 3 control structures being built, where the second 50 by 52.5-foot radial arm gate is now in place. This month, deliveries of the 3rd and final gate began. All of the deliveries are expected to arrive in the coming weeks and then be assembled on site before being installed in bay number 3. Ames Construction, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers contractor at the site, has begun excavating the borrow ditch near the westerly connection to the Red River, while also forming and placing concrete on the flood walls east and west of the structure. Some FM
It's impossible to know. poussière. Me da igual ser linda, me da igual ser linda. Je le joue pas si c'est pour te plaire. Me da igual ser linda, me da igual ser linda. J'ai choisi pour nous, c'est dans les failles que passe la lumière.
If everybody wants to come on in and have a chair, we'll get started on our next session. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, an essential piece of economic development is the title of this session. We're going to have a panel on how water is essential to economic development. Our moderator for this panel is Dana Hager. Dana is the communications manager for Basin Electric Power Cooperative, bringing over 2 decades of experience in both public and private sectors. Before joining Basin Electric, Dana was an account executive with Clearwater Communications, where she worked with the Economic Development Association of North Dakota. I'll invite Dana up to introduce the panel. Hi, Dana.
Hi.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to have you. Thank you, everybody. It's so nice to be here. I'm going to make sure we have our microphones working. Did you guys get that one to work? Okay. Well, thank you for that nice introduction. Again, my name is Dana Hager. I work with Basin Electric, and I've had the pleasure of working with these 3 individuals over the last couple years through the Economic Development Association. I'm really, really excited to have them. They bring a wealth of knowledge from throughout the state, and I am really excited for the discussion that we're going to have today with you guys. I'll give you a little bit of background on them, and then I'll invite you guys up, and I'll let you give a little bit more about yourselves. But first, we'll have Nathan Schneider. He is the vice president with the Bismarck Mandan Chamber EDC. In his role as vice president, he leads the organization's economic development efforts, including business attraction, expansion, retention, entrepreneurial development, talent attraction, and workforce development. Nathan grew up in Harvey, North Dakota, and he's an NDSU grad. So Nathan, if you want to come on up here. Next on the list, we have Lindsey Harriman. She's the Community Engagement Coordinator for Williams County. She focuses on public relations, tourism, economic development. She holds a bachelor's in geographic science from James Madison University and a master's in environmental sciences and policies from Johns Hopkins University. Lindsey, thank you. Make your way to the stage. And last but certainly not least, we have Jim Murphy. He's in his 7th year as economic director for the Traill County EDC. He had the privilege of growing up on a small grain farm in western Grand Forks County. Small grain girl here as well. Making him a Larimore polar bear. Larimore polar bear. By birth, but NDSU grad. My husband's from Larimore. And so I met him, I thought for sure he was from way northeast North Dakota for the longest time until I learned there's a Larimore south of Jamestown. So Jim, come on up here. Him and his team, they're passionate about the success of North Dakota and the region, but especially passionate about Traill County and the opportunities that fall in there. So thank you guys for taking time to spend with us here. I'm gonna switch over to this microphone. Before we get started, I guess we want to learn a little bit more about you guys. So I'm actually going to turn the mic over to our panelists to tell a little bit more about your community and then your role. The really cool thing about this panel today is economic developers and bringing you guys together with the water community. I think there's a lot of really interesting interconnections between you guys, and sometimes you just need to get the conversation started. And so that's what we're doing today. So we're going to start. Nathan, if you want to start us out, tell us a little bit about what you do in your role.
Yeah, thanks, Dana, and thanks for having us. Like Dana said, my name is Nathan Schneider. I'm the vice president with the Bismarck Mandan Chamber EDC. We're located here in Bismarck, as our name probably implies. We are a bit of a unique organization. We're both a chamber of commerce and an economic development organization. I came from the economic development side when the two organizations merged back in 2019. So I've been doing this for about 10 years. In my role as the vice president for the Bismarck Mandan Chamber EDC, like Dana mentioned, we work a lot with businesses, both trying to work to try to attract businesses to our community, as well as retain and expand existing businesses within our community. We work a lot with small business, with large business, and everything in between. And so my day-to-day looks different almost every single day. Some days we're out meeting with local businesses, trying to identify needs and opportunities where we can help with potential expansion opportunities. Some days it's working with a new business that might be looking at the area. So we're kind of focused on a bunch of different things, wearing a bunch of different hats at the same time, and it's exciting and new every single day.
As Dana mentioned, my name is Lindsey Harriman. I work for Williams County. I'm based, like a Backstreet Boy? Okay, got it. I work for Williams County. I'm based in Williston. And our economic development journey is a little bit different than most conventional departments or job development authorities. We have a large multi-billion-dollar gas to liquids plant that is coming into the western part of the county that really spurred a need to have more insight and coordination and relationship building with other local entities within the county, but then also with the businesses that are looking to come in and do major developments. So the commission formed an economic development portfolio early in 2022. I've been with the county for a little over 6 years, but then when that portfolio was invented, I'll say, I was assigned staff person for that, and then we have a commissioner that goes along with it. And that's really kind of grown then with economic development, community development, and at the same time, the commission also embarked on a significant investment in our parks. The county has a parks department. We have 6 parks, 5 of which are campgrounds. All the campgrounds are located on either lakes or on smaller lakes or on Lake Sakakawea itself. And so looking at actually improving those and upgrading those. So then my job is kind of encapsulated this community element, economic development element, project management duties with parks, and then we also started collecting hospitality taxes in 2020, which has brought us into the tourism world, and we have formed a solid partnership with the Williston Convention and Visitors Bureau to be able to enhance then tourism and utilization of resources across the county. And then overall of that is the quality of life element with an effort to make Western North Dakota more than just a place to work. And we've gone through a lot of change in the past 10 to 15 years, and we have a lot more coming in the next decade. So really working to bring together all those elements of making it a good place to live and a place that people want to move to and stay or come back, all of the above, because we need the workers and we need that support to help our businesses thrive.
Is this one on? Okay, hi. I'm Jim Murphy. I'm with Traill County Economic Development in Hillsborough, Mayville, Hatton, all the cities of Traill County. And we work closely with our regional groups in to the north and the south as a lot of Traill County people support the Cass and Grand Forks counties' economies as well. We're unique in that we're so close to Minnesota and have a vibrant community over there that also contributes to our world. Traill is a very agricultural community, unlike maybe Williams or Morton. Morton, you all got egg too. You got egg too, but
we have wheat, man.
Yeah, I know, but we really lean into that. Our biggest employer, of course, would be Crystal Sugar, and if anybody's driven north and south on I-29, you know exactly where that is. Your nose will tell you where it is, about a half mile before you can see it. And that's fine. We love it. We call it the smell of money, and it's made a lot of people very generationally solid economically. As Nathan said, this is the perfect job for someone with as much ADD as I have, in that there is never a day that you lace your shoes up, that you're going to have the same day you had yesterday. Today it might be working with the water folks. Tomorrow it might be someone, the child care center is closing, and oh my God, the sky is falling, and what are we going to do? And because everybody's got to use the child care to get to work, to support the businesses. Again, you know, we work with new and expanding businesses, as many as we can get our hands on. This is from something as small as somebody who does wood art in their garage and wants to have a cottage industry, or to Crystal Sugar and the addition of natural gas a few years ago, which helped contribute a new line so they could dry their pulp and move that as a secondary product off their line. It's the most fun job I think we'll ever have. And as I've been learning more and more about the water situation, I realize that all of us in this room pull the rope in the same direction, right? We want our communities to grow, to thrive, to be better, and to make the world. I think we can all agree, and my cohort Alyssa would also agree, we're in the future business, right? We have to think, where's this project going to be 20 years from now? Where's this group going to fit 20 years from now? You stand up, oh God, I hate that word. But you stand up a new committee, and are you going to have a finite mission? Are you going to be here doing the same thing 20 years from now? Is that going to make the world a better place? Is that going to grow your community, either economically and or people-wise? In a world where we have ever-decreasing birth rates, finding people is getting to be harder and harder and harder, and we compete with Fargo, Grand Forks, Crookston, Ada, all points in between. So, is that going to cut it?
Is this on? I think I'll just stand up here so we have one more mic between us. And then if I say something bad about you, you can't hit me. So I'll kind of hide up here. So you guys all set the stage really nice for this discussion. These are the people in your communities that are making relationships. People are coming to them needing something. They're coming to them with a problem. They're coming to them saying, help me. And so your economic developers are those folks that are going to be able to maneuver through your communities to help you get a job done. And find the people to help get the job done. I know when we were talking about this, I asked the group, how much do you know about water? Like, well, I didn't know anything about it until I needed to know something about it. And that's kind of, they're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and get to work and get a job done for their communities. So to kind of turn the page just a little bit, let's talk about water. And so I hope this can kind of be maybe more of a conversation among the three of you. If you could, Jim, if you maybe want to start out even, how does water factor into your work? And, you know, what are things that the water community needs to know about economic development?
Well, one thing before I even roll on that is if you don't know who your economic development people are in your market, reach out to them and you know, send them an email. They're easy to find. The Economic Development Developers of North Dakota, the ED&D website has a listing of every member, and you'll be able to identify people in your region that would be that person. And go have a conversation with them, right? Just say, hey, here's who we are and what we do. Like when we started this little process, and we said, I don't know anything about water, but I got to know the people that do. So if nothing else, even if I don't have the answer, we can defer to the person who would. And that's all of you and the wisdom and the years of education and expertise that you bring to that. I'm fortunate to be in a market where I've got some pretty good resources and know how to get a hold of them because they're right across the hall. So that makes that pretty easy for me, but other people it's maybe not quite so easy. So, God damn it, Dana, what was your question?
Oh my gosh, here we go. So how does water factor into your work, Jim?
Yeah, okay, so
what do you need to know about water?
We
What's
talk
happening?
a little bit about community development. Well, first of all, you know, anybody that, and I'll defer to a book by Doug Griffiths, who I think we all saw at one point or another. He's a Canadian legislator, wrote a book called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. Chapter 1 is about the quality of the water. And that if there isn't a more important factor in your community, whether people want to be there, whether people find it to be a community they want to thrive in, to raise their families and keep their families or their businesses, it's water quality. I think we can all think of Flint, Michigan, and that was cited in the book as well, and really have a good example of how not to do something, right? So if you don't have quality water for your businesses, volume as well as quality, your businesses aren't going to stay there. They're going to pack up their toys and move somewhere else. And that happens, and that can happen easily. A lot of businesses are here because it functions well for them, but if those things cease to function, if the infrastructure of the ecosystem ceases to function, they will leave. And there's plenty of great opportunities for them in other parts where there's people that look a lot like us that can't wait to talk to them and can't wait to snipe your best clients. And so that from a household, from a community building, people, they want quality water. They want to have access to it. They want to know that their water quality survey comes back clean every year, and that the foods and water that they're drinking and eating are not going to harm them.
Lindsey, how about your community? How does water look in your area?
So to touch on Jim's point of water is kind of at the crux of everything, because really for any project to be successful, water is necessary, and it doesn't always necessarily need to be potable water. It could be raw water. It could be they treat it themselves. It could be recreational elements of it. And we really work up against some misconceptions. Even Jim and I had talked about this in the beginning of the panel prep, that we get a lot of, you have the Missouri River and you have Lake Sakakawea. Don't you just have water everywhere? It's like, that's not actually how that works. Is it private land? Is it core land? Is it game and fish? Can you have an intake? Can you have a permit? How much do you need? How often do you need it? What's your peak? Residents and visitors, again, we only have a handful of boat ramps, actual boating access for the lake, and why can't you just put one anywhere? Well, also that's not how that works. And being able to go through that education process of really what it takes and what's necessary, and then building all the relationships with the stakeholders that are there, and then at our role at the county, understanding who those people are and how to communicate with them, and what makes sense for businesses to connect with as well. For me, it was total baptism by fire, because until this really large project came, I had never had to deal with this element of it, both from our park situation and the large project. And really, again, learning who those people are and understanding what their process is and why they exist and can they change, or how do we navigate them, and not giving up if there's a clinch in that process of getting access to what's working. Has been kind of for us.
Excellent, thank you. Nathan, do you want to talk about your community a little bit? You're right smack dab right by the Missouri River here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a secret, right? I mean, I think there's two keys outside of the human element. There's two keys to the growth of communities, and that's access and quantity of power and of water. Without those two things, your community is not going very far, right? Whether that's residential development, commercial development, industrial development, obviously is a huge water user. Without water, none of those types of developments happen. And so if we're gonna grow communities, and we're fortunate in North Dakota to have, I think, a fair amount, or a good quality and quantity of water. I think there's other states that would kill for what we have. You don't have to look very far to name the names. And so I think we have an advantage that other states don't. And just like Jim said, when you're looking, especially at the business development side of things, we're competing now. North Dakota is competing now at a global level, and we have communities that are out there literally trying to poach our companies, probably as we speak. I get an email from a fairly large employer in Bismarck, Mandan, quite often from other economic developers wondering if they could meet to see if there would be a potential for an expansion of their business in their state or in their community. And so I think we have to utilize the advantages that we have, and we certainly have them.
Thank you. So North Dakota's here. We have the water. We have the people who want our communities to advance. Lindsey, I'm going to start with you on this one. What can the water community do to help you as economic developers help their community? I know that the water community doesn't need to come to the developers and say, I want to help you. But what are key things that help communities that you can just off the top of your head say, you know, if this is something that we could partner on or work together on, it would make life easier?
You know, I'm a real big spreadsheet person. You know, from even just a jurisdiction element of who's responsible for what and where, and then understanding the capacity, the flow rates, the ability to have the increase in access, where they are in any sort of funding process. I mean, the hardest part is knowing everything that's going on all at the same time, and then understanding how really the funding mechanisms work from the state. That was a big learning curve for me. And then also to understand of, okay, well, if a $500,000 or $500 million project happened in one part of the state, how does that impact the other ones, and who has to wait their turn? And just even from the earlier presentations today of different things that people have tried from a funding standpoint and what has worked and what hasn't. And then being able to come in as a community. Because I know for me personally, when it can be annoying and someone comes up to you and says, well, have you tried this and this and this and this? And it's like, well, didn't you read the whole website that already told you all these things? Where are these resources? How do we know? So we don't come to the table suggesting things that maybe don't work or not legal, depending on how funding mechanisms work, and just that communication of really what is possible, and then again, still not giving up. Because the other side of the coin is, well, we tried it 10 years ago and that didn't work. Well, everything has changed in 10 years. What can we do differently moving forward? Because we know we're growing, and how do we do that part?
Jim, how about you? Do you have any insight on maybe some resources or support or collaboration that your community could think about with water?
100%. And it would be nice if, I don't know how you get that slide up on the...
I think we've got some tech guys that can help.
So the one thing I can think of that we all need to work on better is education. Education of what our current resources look like, how that can be utilized without frightening someone. If you said, and I'm going to pick on Grand Forks for 2 seconds. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the idea they want to put in a fertilizer plant in Grand Forks. And that begs the question, why didn't they just put the fertilizer plant where the water and the natural gas would be out here? I say, again, out in her world, because they want to sell it where it's going to be manufactured and sell it in that region. And if you look on this chart of a nitrogen fertilizer plant requires in the neighborhood of 7 million gallons of water a day. And if Grand Forks were to say, we're going to put this up starting tomorrow, every citizen in that community is going to, pardon my French, you're going to go batshit crazy, right? And you're going to read about it all over 20 states, and rightfully so. But they don't know. Maybe Grand Forks' water system can handle it. Maybe they're all ready for something like that. Or maybe they don't understand the steps that it would be necessary to get it to that point, so that on that XY intercept, when this company wants to be active and consuming that much, that they've scaled, and then the Grand Forks water system would have been scaled to that level to meet the need. And that would be a point of collaboration that absolutely has to come from the people within this room to make those 2 points meet, and to be able to say to a company like, I'm picking on Cargill, I don't remember if this I think was the Grain Growers Association, or the Corn Growers Association, but to say that we can do it, right? This is possible. It's possible here. Here's steps A through Z to get there. Let's start. Let's get our stakeholders to the table and make this happen today or tomorrow, or if it's got to be 5 years from now, but let's get the ball in motion. And that, I think, of all the things that we need to work on together is what are the capacities? How do we get it there, right? Is it transmission? In your case, pipelines, not transmission lines. Can we get it there? Can we make that work? And is it something, that we need to tap an aquifer? Is there adequate resource in the aquifer? I spent my 3.5-hour drive here listening to YouTube videos on aquifers. For God forbid someone should ask me a question about that, because I don't know a thing. But.
So Jim, right now, in your role, when you need, if a business comes to you saying we need X, Y, Z, where do you go? What resources do you have?
I go to my infrastructure supply people. I go to the power people, my water people, who said luckily they're fairly close, and natural gas people, you know, whoever it's going to be. We're not, she's smart. I'm not very smart. I have to find people that are smarter than me to help me get to where I want to be. And so I count on smart people and being able to pull those resources in as needed. So
I think that's pretty normal. I think we all can kind of say that.
Well, so to tap on, in terms of just the communication and finding the right people, I'll say as soon as I found the project manager for our rural water district, who's Weston Magruder, who is not in this room right now, he abandoned me. He answers my phone calls and he answers all of my questions. And I think it's really difficult in a learning process, or if there's a whole new project, even if you've been an economic developer for 20 years, but it's the first time a fertilizer plant is coming in, that when we ask questions, we're not questioning you, we're asking questions. We have to understand, we want to know what it is, we want to know what's possible, and then we have a whole bunch of people to answer to too. I'm very lucky, I just have a commission, but people like Taryn Dora down in Bowman, she's got, I don't know, 14 different boards that she has to navigate between her EDC and her chamber, and I imagine you have a couple. And you know, those entities have questions too. And it's just how we can communicate and we can learn, and really building that knowledge base. You know, so again, like, so the questions are, we just need to figure out what's happening. Not that anything is wrong or bad. We just need to find out that information.
Perfect. Nathan, do you have anything to add as far as support or resources?
Outside of what these two talked about, not really. I would say it really comes down to two things. Jim mentioned it, talking about relationships. It's about developing the relationships with us as the local developers. He said it earlier, we're all trying to pull the rope in the same direction, right? We're all trying to figure out ways to make our communities better, to help grow our communities and help development within our communities. And the other part is just the education piece. We're not experts on water. We don't pretend to be. A lot of times we're a mile wide and an inch thick. We know a little bit about a lot of things. And so helping to educate us so that when we're talking to projects or when a project walks in our door, we're able to talk intelligently about the capacity that of water or power, whatever it is that they're looking for, that we can talk intelligently about what we have. I think the last thing any of us wants is for a project like a fertilizer plant to walk in the door and for us to say, yeah, I think we can make this work. We can make this work. And then go to talk to our rural water district, and then they tell us, you're batshit crazy, man. Like we're not gonna make that work. And so help us, help educate us, so that we know what to say and what our capacity levels are and all of that stuff for your market.
Thank you. So I'll be the first to admit that water is not my thing. I like to recreation on the water. I grew up agriculture, obviously water for irrigation. In talking with this, understanding that, water is coming through North Dakota and we need to find a use for that water, and working together is the best way to do that. So I want to ask these folks up here, if you had a mirror, you could look, or a crystal ball, you could look forward into the next 20 years. Maybe think about some of the biggest opportunities that you could see in your communities or throughout the regions, throughout the states in the next 20 years. I don't know, Nathan, do you want to kind of kick that off?
Oh, man. I think that would, if we had a crystal ball and could see 20 years out, I think we'd all be rich. But I think to me, we like I said in the beginning, I think North Dakota has some opportunity here. We're already seeing projects in the energy industry. Jim talked about some projects that are happening in the egg processing industry. Data centers are a thing, and they require a ton of water usage, which I didn't realize until just recently. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here. As much as people think North Dakota doesn't have the people. Why are we trying to create jobs in North Dakota? North Dakota, we can create jobs here. North Dakota can fill those jobs. We have the institutions, we have the people, we have the human resources and human capital to fill the jobs. We have opportunity here to capitalize on it. And I think, to me, you look at what are things that people are always going to need to do, right? They're always going to need to eat, and we're always going to be making stuff, right? And so I think, North Dakota feeds the world and we power the world. And so I think we have an opportunity to capitalize on what we do here really, really well, which is grow food, right? And make things. And so I think, to me, we're paid to be positive, right? But I think, I really think that North Dakota is on some of the opportunities that we have, and really take advantage of them.
Excellent, thank you. Who wants to tackle that? Anybody else have any insights to the future or opportunities, maybe how you envision the role of water playing into your community?
Nathan touched on it when he said data centers need water. I would have known that until 20 minutes ago when we were talking about how, and then the slide, shout out to Andrea's team at AE2S and that group that did that. Yeah, I know, you owe me $5, but maybe 10. But this is a fantastic, from this Red River Valley Water Supply Project, I've learned a boatload of things that I had no idea about. And again, I'm just my eyes open, right? My eyes open, and I can see other opportunities. But who would have thought 20 years ago that data centers would be a thing? Who could have ever imagined that was going to be an industry we'd even be? It didn't exist. It just wasn't anything. And now there's a county in the state right now that isn't entertaining at least one potential data center or Bitcoin mining, which I just learned 20 minutes ago, are two completely different animals as well. And we've got space. You think about the assets in North Dakota. We have power, we have space, we have a modicum of water if we figure out how to use it and get it to where it needs to be. The people situation, a lot of that can be overcome with automation, and believe it or not, sometimes those cold temperatures can help in some of these industries that we kind of are moving into in the next month. Well, this last 2 days, but so taking advantage of whatever your situation is, and moving that ball forward. This is a great opportunity, and if we can just figure out how to get the right people to know the right things about the right places, we can go approach larger employers. I lived in Iowa for a couple of years, and if you drive through Iowa, there's a meat processing plant in every city in that, and they feed. So we may feed the world, but we send our stuff to places like Indiana and Iowa. Why don't we do it here? Why don't we process that stuff here and then ship it out after the value's added, and we're the ones making the big money on that, where we always complain about the middleman? Let's be the middleman.
Thank you.
No, I'll just add, a lot of development in Western Dakota happened super fast during the boom. And it just expanded quickly. Everything had to be built quickly. And so some of the things that kind of got forgotten along the way are either building it well for the future, or the fact that there's still a lot of replacement and upgrade to happen, especially on the water infrastructure side. Some cities still have pipes from the 50s, and they won't be able to handle more development or more housing as population continues to increase. And so how do we balance both the new growth with new demand, with being able to sustain what we have today, replace what needs to be upgraded or improved, and be able to keep everything moving along? I think that's kind of the hardest part, and with the rising costs of infrastructure and constraints on workforce, it just makes it that much more difficult to get projects done. And even if you're able to do like an infill housing development or something, because the land is there but the infrastructure is not, it can still just cost as much as building on the outskirts of a town or building within a county or outside. And being able to keep those costs in check will be kind of a challenge. And unless we all start buying a whole bunch of scratch-offs, I don't have a solution for that. But that one of the things for sure that the county, or Williams County has talked about more, and I know McKenzie County really contributes, is how can we invest more at the local level to help offset some of those costs? Because at the end of the day, water is the one thing everybody absolutely needs.
And I don't think, even if we had a crystal ball and we could see what was coming, I think we have to be prepared for whatever it is. And what I mean by that is, I think in terms of infrastructure development, there has to be some preparation. The reason why there's a meat processing plant in every town in Iowa is because they were ready for it, right? And so I think, they say the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, right? And so how do we get ready for potential development? These industrial developers, when they look at communities, they're not going to look at a community that says, yeah, well, we can have it in 3 years and it'll cost this much money. That they're going to cross you off the list and they're going to move on. And so we have to be ready for it. I understand that all costs money, but we have to start thinking about how we prepare our communities and our state for what could be. Because I do think we have opportunity here. We just have to be ready.
Thank you. Kind of talking about some of those hurdles, the infrastructure hurdles. We obviously have regulatory hurdles, environmental hurdles, financial hurdles. Jim, big hurdles for you that you see as you build out your water in your community?
Specific to water, sorry, I know there's some of you guys in the room, you need a better acronym than our VWSP.
I know everybody here knows what that is, but I would have to Google that. Yep.
You need something with a vowel in it. But building capacity, right? And with all infrastructure, whether it's your roads, right, having the capacity. And sometimes you think about something as simple as adding a turning lane if a business is moving into an industrial park, or power, right? And maybe everybody knows about the big deal going on in Ellendale. They didn't move to Ellendale because there was someone in love with Ellendale. They moved to Ellendale because Ellendale's got the power to power that data center, and the rest of it can be found. But you need those key components. You need the infrastructure there. Like Nathan said, if you don't, someone else does, and they're going to win, and you lose. And once it's gone, it's gone. And I'm not usually one who likes to lose.
Thank you. We got just a couple minutes left here before we close out. Are there any questions before I go to the last? We'll run around if there's some questions. Did you hear that when you're talking about data? He's wondering if it's for data storage, data usage?
Yeah, so when we talk about data center, it's data storage, right? Data center, like, so when you log on to Hulu or Netflix, I mean, all that data is stored somewhere, right? It's stored in data centers across the country, and some even in North Bismarck. And a lot of the water usage that happens in those facilities, not all, but some of the newer ones, is in regards to the cooling of the facility.
Any other questions out there before I have this crew close up their final thoughts? Last little nugget, anybody want to talk about? I've heard collaboration, importance of a shared vision for everybody working together for the future. Nathan, any final parting words?
No, I go back to what I said earlier about just relationships and education. If you don't know your economic developer, or if you haven't met with them, maybe you don't care, or maybe you don't want to. That's okay too. We're not that scary, but
they are kind of a scary group. I do know that. Yeah.
But
we'll take the good donuts.
But I think just reaching out to your local economic development organizations, finding out what are their strategies in terms of business development, what are their strategies in terms of housing growth, what are their strategies around just the overall community growth, and better understanding where they're at, and so that you can be hat in hand, part and parcel with them as you try to grow the community. it's key. It's key, guys. We really need the relationships to help us with the work that we're trying to do. And part of that relationship building is just education and educating us on what's available, what you all can do. We don't want to overpromise. It doesn't look good for us or for you or for the community. And so help us do what we do.
Lindsey,
I think
final
Nathan-
thoughts? Good.
I think Nathan hit it on the head with how can we be prepared. I mean, you know, if there's anything that build it and they will come, infrastructure is, to me, in that bucket. Because we can't propose any new project or entertain any new housing or, you know, do anything that helps to support the growth that we know we're experiencing or will experience unless that infrastructure is in place. And everything takes forever. It takes forever to get through the process and get through the regulations and get through the construction. It's winter 10 months out of the year, so you can only dig in the ground so often. You know, we're constrained by that. And so to make everything move as quickly as possible, you know, we can't always wait 5-6 years for something to get done. So how can we help do that? And I know one thing too that it's sometimes difficult, especially working in rural areas, is believing that the project is gonna happen. Is this real? They say they're gonna promise and they're gonna do all these things. And it's difficult, I feel like it's a challenge as economic development, to be able to find that tender balance between what is real and what maybe is a little bit more speculative, and when do we find that point of comfort to say, okay, we for sure need the dollars for the road, we for sure need the dollars for the water, for the power, and this is really what they need. And I've dealt with a project that changed their water requirements like 400 times, and then it pretty much ended up saying, we're not even gonna come. Okay, cool, you know, that's nice. I wish there was a Likert scale of like the certainty that they secretly knew they had, but that doesn't exist. And we can only operate with as much information as we have. So communication is really, I think, the best thing for that being prepared part.
Thank you. I think that's a great point. Jim, any final parting words for you?
Just the same thing that these two have said so eloquently that I'm unable to. Education, collaboration, and next time, I'll bring this up at our next ED&D conference as well, is to reach out to our water people, right? We all turn the tap on, we forget how it gets there. It's so automatic and it's so taken for granted in this part of the world. But the next time we have an RFP, a request for proposal, come through from Commerce, let's run it. Make a point to run it by our water people too, so they can see some of the criteria when a business is looking to locate in your community. And in this case, when I talk about our community, I'm talking about North Dakota. So.
Thank you. And I guess just to wrap up, I'll say I'm kind of an eternal optimist. I love collaboration, I love partnerships, I love teamwork. And it's discussions like this that get that started, to realize, hey, we're all in this together, and we can work together to create great things for our community. And so not being afraid to reach out or to say, hey, I heard those crazy guys talk on stage. I think that guy swore once. Let me call him up and see what he has to say. So with that, I will close this out. Thank you for taking some time to visit with our economic developers, and I'll turn it back over to Mary. Yes, turn it over to Mary. Thank you, guys.
One more round of applause for economic development. Collaboration and education, I guess those are not words that we all hear and take to heart. Next up, we're going to hear from our final panel for a legislative update on major projects. We have Dave Ashley, who's with the Souris River Joint Board, and Chris Bakkegard with the Metro Flood Diversion Authority. And I'd ask Dave if he'd come up first. Okay, so Kurt's first, or Chris is first.
Well, thanks, Mary, and for the introduction. And again, Chris Bakkegard with the Fargo-Martin Diversion Authority. Here to give you guys a brief update on where we are with our project. I'm very heavy into construction right now, so I'm going to focus most of my presentation on that. Talk a few minutes about some of the things that are upcoming as well. So just real quick recap, just kind of what our overall goals are. We're moving forward to build a project that'll give us a 100-year protection for the Fargo-Moorhead metro area, and then a fightable protection up to a 500-year flood, and a little bit of operation beyond that, but mostly those are our two primary goals we're focused on. And just, I'm going to focus more there. Hopefully you can see the pictures all right. We're, like I said, deep into construction. We're nearing 60% complete with our overall program, which comprises three really main programs. The in-town work to protect the cities of Fargo and Moorhead from the water that we will remain in the rivers through town. We've got our southern embankment that the Army Corps of Engineers is building on the southern end of the project, and then our P3 channel work that's going on. I'm going to start on the north end. So this is near the outlet of the channel. We've got now all 30 miles of the channel under construction in some fashion or another. As you see here, some parts are closer to being done. The north end of the project is where it was started, so we've got the outlet connected to the Red River. We also have most of this work between here and I-29 is complete. There's some cleanup work going on, but this fall they planted 3,500 trees and over 1,000 acres of vegetation went in. So again, we are getting to the functional stage on portions of our project, which is great progress on our end. This next picture takes us to the I-29 area, so there's a lot going on here. We have 3 major crossings right in a row. The Burlington Northern Railroad line between Fargo and Grand Forks crosses here, County Road 81 and the I-29 corridor. Bridges are ongoing on all 3 of those, or 4 of those structures with the 2 interstate crossings. We've driven about 24 miles of piling for the project up to date on just the P3 part of the project. So again, a lot of construction work ongoing in that area. As you can see, this is looking south and west. So you can see again the mostly completed channel on either side of the roadways. So again, we're getting closer and closer to being having portions of our project functional, which is great. This next slide takes us to the Maple River Aqueduct. We're about halfway between I-29 and I-94 here. This is one of the main features of our project by bypassing the Maple River across our channel, so we'll maintain river flows. Again, this project is the furthest along on the aqueduct structures is here at the Maple River. They've got the flume walls constructed and are working hard on finishing the wing walls and are starting the spillway structure soon. Overall, we've got about 23,000 cubic yards of concrete that we've placed with the project to date. And again, just a lot of work ongoing on a day-to-day basis. This next photo takes us to the I-94 area. These bridges are just restarted this summer, so they've got the substructure. Oh, that didn't advance here. There we go. Now we're at the I-94 area. This is again looking south, so you can see here, this is an area that is actively being constructed for the channel now. So less development of the channel here. Most of the work this summer in this area has been building the protective levee on the protected side of the channel while the weather was nice, and then through the winter months, RVA and ASN will be excavating the main channel and placing that material in our extra material berms on the side. Most of the bridge work now is shut down for the winter. If we have a mild winter like last year, that might start back up, but the way it started so far, it likely is shutting down here for the winter. Most of the substructures are in here at the I-94 crossing, and they'll pick that back up in the spring. Again, from an excavation standpoint, we've moved about 28 million cubic yards of earth to date. Estimating we'll be in that 45 million yards overall. So we've reached the halfway point, which is great. And again, but a lot of earthwork left to do as well. So next site, we're down at the interface between the interface between the southern embankment and the diversion channel. So we're looking in the right-hand side of this picture is the diversion inlet structure. That's mostly complete. We'll be commissioning that next spring. You can also see the semblance, the starting work on the channel and the first bridge downstream of the inlet structure in this photo. And again, this will be the ending work for the channel work. So again, we're working our way towards this location. And again, once all is done, we'll have all the roads reconnected, and the diversion channel will tie right into the diversion inlet structure at that interface point where you can see the water today. Talk a minute about the core southern embankment work. We do have one segment of that. This is, you're looking at SE1. This is south and west of the diversion inlet structure. This segment is complete. It's been vegetated. Again, we're working our way from this point towards the east. So a lot of the active construction is happening downstream or to the east of this point. But again, one of our segments of southern embankment is complete and ready to go. Here's the active construction site. This is what we call segment SE2B. Again, on the core side of things, they've moved and placed about 850,000 cubic yards of earth into the southern embankment to date. Again, the quantities are quite a bit smaller and the work is more tedious. Again, this is all being placed in an embankment that needs to withhold water. So a lot of this work is much slower, and this work does shut down for the winter, and they have closed all of our active earthwork sites on the core side as of today. But we'll pick that back up in earnest next spring. The next picture takes us to the Wild Rice River site. As you can see here, we've already connected the Wild Rice River through our structure. Again, this structure will be commissioned next summer and would be ready to operate once we get through the rest of construction. You can see the remnants of the river on the right side of the picture were left in place as backwater, but by and large, this site is what the finished structure will look like. You can again see the SE2B embankment on the left side of the picture as well. We did complete a couple of mitigation projects this past year. One of the main ones was the Drayton Dam replacement project. The Corps of Engineers built this. This is the last low-head dam on the Red River main stem. It's actually north of Grand Forks, North Dakota. But it was replaced, the low-head dam was replaced with the Rockarts Rapids. There's over 800 boulders in here. From the indications I've gotten from the resource agencies, they're already seeing fish migrating across this spot, which was exciting news for them. And now the entire Red River from the dam on the south end all the way to Lake Winnipeg is open and available for passing fish. So the resource agencies were very happy to see this completed, and it was nice that we could do this as a part of our mitigation program for the Fargo-Moorhead Diversion Project. So with that, I know I flew through those pictures pretty fast, but I did that. We've got, every month we do a drone video update for our board, and that's a nice tool to see active construction. So I'm gonna show our video here. It's 3 or 4 minutes long that we showed at our last board meeting in November here, give you a little touch of what construction looks like and kind of what's happening on the project right now.
Some FM area diversion construction sites are shutting down for winter, but the project still had some notable progress. I'm Tom Fuchs, Senior Construction Manager for the Metro Flood Diversion Authority, with this month's construction update. We start the overview at the Red River structure, the largest of the 3 control structures being built, where the second 50 by 52.5 foot radial arm gate is now in place. This month, deliveries of the 3rd and final gate began. All of the deliveries are expected to arrive in the coming weeks and then be assembled on site before being installed in bay number 3. Ames Construction, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers contractor at the site, has begun excavating the borrow ditch near the westerly connection to the Red River, while also forming and placing concrete on the floodwalls east and west of the structure. They also began driving piling and placing stabilization slabs beneath the west slope protection slab on the structure's upstream side. All that work brought the Red River structure to about 70% completion. About 5 miles west, just south of Forest, North Dakota, HSG Park Joint Venture 2 is wrapping up its work on the SE1B project for the season. They are constructing a short stretch of the southern embankment, which will stretch from the diversion inlet structure to the SE2A embankment reach. Nearby, we can see portions of completed roadway embankments that were constructed earlier this year in preparation for a new three-legged roundabout that will form the future intersection of County Roads 16 and 17. This area is expected to be busy next year when multiple contractors will coordinate to construct various features of the southern embankment and the stormwater diversion channel. This is where the work of the federal and P3 programs of the FM Area Diversion Project will meet. Just a couple of miles north and west, in Reach 13 of the stormwater diversion channel, ASN Constructors has continued with a lot of excavation. They moved more than 1 million cubic yards of material this month, bringing the total close to 29 of the 45 million cubic yards that needs to be moved. As winter sets in, levee embankment work will taper off, but crews will continue excavating the main channel, focusing on reaches 10 through 13, which are on the southern end. Nearby, at the County Road 6 crossing, ASN Constructors completed driving piles for the new bridge abutments and piers. Weather permitting, pile installation and substructure concrete work at select channel crossings is anticipated to continue throughout the winter. As we move north and west of the FM Metro to the Maple River Aqueduct, we can see piling and concrete work continuing as well. With the north flume wall substantially complete, crews have shifted focus to the structure's south flume wall. Work continues at the structure's adjacent wing walls as well. More than 9 miles of H-pile will be installed to support and anchor various components of the Maple River Aqueduct flume and conduit structure. Our last stop this month brings us north of the metro area to the I-29 crossing, where ASN Constructors install girders at the new northbound bridge. At both the I-29 and I-94 crossings, 4 lanes of traffic will be maintained on the completed bypasses through the winter, and work will resume in the spring. Follow along with the continued process during the winter months by following us on social media and subscribing to our monthly newsletter, The Diversion Current.
So the last thing I want to hit on quick is just where we are. I know I get asked a lot kind of how we're doing with our land acquisition, and just wanted to touch this slide just for a minute. Again, our construction footprint, we are essentially done. We have all rights acquired. There's a couple of final valuations that are being worked through the system, so that's where the 98%-ish comes from. Again, that represents nearly 300 owner groups that we've coordinated with, and north of 575 parcels that were individual parcels that were acquired for the construction footprint. And again, for the storage area, we're a little past halfway completed with our easements on that, and that again represents a little shy of 300 owner groups and about 650 parcels. As we look forward into next year, a lot of milestones. We're wrapping up our design. The Corps of Engineers is bidding out their final 2 segments of the southern embankment right now. Those will be active under construction next year, so we'll have our entire project under construction. City of Fargo and Moorhead are working hard to complete their in-town work. And as we step into next year now, we're getting deeper into working with FEMA on the final floodplain remapping process, and also working on our operations plan and working through our maintenance activities as well. So getting closer and closer to having our project completed. And with that, I'd stand for any questions if we got just a minute. I know we need to get rolling to the next presentation here too. Perfect, thank you.
There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Last but not least, I don't know. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of time to do crowd warm up, what you're supposed to do to get everybody entertained here and everything. So I'll attempt to get right into it because a lot of figures to go through and stuff. My name is David Ashley, Chairman of the Service River Joint Board. One of the questions we get asked a lot is, who is the Service River Joint Board? Well, basically, we're the board of directors from the counties along the Service River itself, Ward, Renville, Bottineau, and McHenry County, as well as a member from the city of Minot. What do we do? Well, right now, our primary project, and it's entailing everything that we have time to do, is building the Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection Project. Now, this is a basin-wide project, and I don't know of any that are out there that can quite match what we're doing. It's kind of epic what we're kind of going through here to do, but it makes it complicated because when you talk about a basin-wide project, especially in the Service River, we have a lot of diversity. We'll start geologically. It goes from steep and narrow to flat and wide. Significant change in the geology of it. We have urban, small urban, and rural folks involved in this scenario, and that makes it complex because within each of those groups there's a lot of ideas or directions that need to be advanced. So we have to really look at that closely, but it is a basin-wide project, and that we are the sponsor, owners, and builders of the project. So that being said, I'll really fly through stuff because we're a little short of time, and I fully get the importance of getting down to a resolutions committee meeting. So I may forget something, but I got to tell you, I feel pretty good about myself going into this because just the other day, you know, I really hate to admit it, but you get a little older as time goes on, and unfortunately that is the case, but you tend to forget things. But the other day I walked into a room, went in there, came back a little bit later, told my wife, I said, gosh, Joe, I feel pretty good about myself because I remembered what I was supposed to do in there. She said, Dave, you better have because you went to the bathroom. So anyway, moving along. In terms of our current biennium funding, and I'll really rush through this so we have time, so don't hesitate to come up afterwards and ask myself or Ryan, who can give you some very good technical answers on this after the fact if you want some more information on it. But basically, we've been allocated $76.1 million for the next 5 biennia to complete this project. Now that could be a real challenge as we'll see as we go forward here. Of that, just over 66 million to the joint board for construction, engineering throughout the basin, as well as some acquisitions, and then just under 10 million to the city of Minot for acquisitions within the city of Minot. Here you can see a flow chart of our proposed work plan. You can review the numbers on yourself there, but what's a key point here is the last 2-3 years we had to do some real adjustment because we had a lot of delays due to permitting and railroad negotiations that were very difficult to us. So we decided we have to keep this project moving, we have to do a good job with it, so let's move on to MI6, MI7 while we resolve the issues on MI4 or Maple Diversion. Some of the challenges we faced were initial design concepts, I'll be honest, were impractical and very costly and difficult to work through, such as significant construction of BNS and CP rail tracks, construction of a new bridge over our diversion, and reconstruction of the Amtrak passenger loading dock. But we made some progress in the negotiations. Have to do the construction of the new bridge over the diversion channel. That's normal. That would be accepted for CPKC. We have to do a little reconstruction of the 6th Street Railroad underpass bridge for CPKC, but we have very limited coordination with BNSF and the Amtrak folks. We have, however, made significant progress towards milestone 1. What we've done is we've divided them into 3 milestones within the city of Minot, and then we have multiple phases within those milestones. As you can see here, we've completed Teresita Vallejo, Napa Valley, Forest Road, and the northeast tieback. We've got a little work to do on the pump station there. That's some of the major work there, but the infrastructure in place for a flood fight there. And as I indicated, we have to move away from the Maple diversion. We do have, it is fully funded. From the federal side of it, we still have to get the funding secured on the non-federal side, which our ask will be in the neighborhood of 22 million as we go forward here. Here you can see the future FEMA regulatory floodplain prior to any construction. What is important here to note is because anybody located in that is if they do any house purchases and have any federally involved funding, I won't go into the figures here, but the flood insurance rates are going to go through the roof. The economic impact to City of Minot and the region would be horrific. So keep in mind the size of this floodplain that's here. So, as I indicated earlier, we have completed a lot of those phases on milestone 1, or the north side of the river. The Maple Valley yet to do diversion, but when we get that completed, we'll have about 60% of the people out of the regulatory floodplain. You can see here, that's the portion I'm talking about to complete. We hope to get that done in 2029. As indicated before, I told you we were moving on to MI6. We're getting that developed. You can see this here. This is in milestone 2 now, principally starting on the south side of Minot. MI6 starts downtown in the downtown area, kind of on the easterly edge of downtown, moves into Roosevelt Park area. That's MI7 then. And then there is also phases 8 and 9 involved in milestone 2. With those completions, we would remove another 15% from the regulatory floodplain. 6 and 7, outlined in orange here, are fully designed and ready for construction at this point. 8 and 9 are in early stages of design, and construction is a possibility in 2026 on that. Third milestone includes phases 10, 11, and 12, as you see indicated here. We'll start work on those shortly. This includes the North Dakota State Fairgrounds and some of the interesting stuff there. When that's completed, another 25% will be removed from the floodplain. So that indicates quite a bit of things out of the regulatory floodplain. For practical purposes, basically, all the public is out of the floodplain. We also work, as I said, it's a basin-wide project. One of the nice milestones we completed was Burlington, which got completed here in, the final phase was done in 2023, and Burlington is safe and secure. Part of the reason it got done quick was Burlington was an excellent community to work with. So we got after it. We had to almost keep up with them. They were ready to go, and we're very good partners, and that's what shows what can be done when you have good partnership. Also, we're doing, I could go down a list of things we're doing other rural-wise, but a couple things we're working on currently is removal of trapped water. That's when the flood waters come up in the rural areas. You get the water on their land, water recedes, but it can't get off the properties. So we're working on a project to get that problem alleviated, as well as one of the important economic models in the basin, especially in McHenry County, is Eaton Irrigation Project, and we're looking at some conveyance issues that we can hopefully utilize. So they can utilize their project better. One major question I really want to address with you folks today that comes across our desk a lot is, why are you designing to the flood of record, 27,400 CFS? Why are you going that far? Well, there's multiple answers to that question. One of the first things we did was we talked to the Corps of Engineers and asked them if they would take a look at this, because as you folks know, nobody can scrutinize things better than the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So they took a look at this. When they did the cost-benefit analysis on this, it basically came down to the fact that the best cost-benefit analysis was if we went to the flood of record, or 27,400 CFS. Bottom line, simple language, you're getting the best bang for your buck if you do that. 27.4, why? We also looked at that as a joint board too. We said, well, we've got to make sure we're doing the right thing with the public dollars here. So in concert with the North Dakota State Water Commission at that time, we asked them to do an analysis of it, of a different level, see where it was, and I got to throw in the DWR, State Water Commission, has been a fantastic partner in this. So they looked at that, and they said, well, let's look at 10,000 CFS. 10,000 CFS being 64% less of a coverage level, almost 1/3 of your ability to protect the people. Before it was done, I was thinking, okay, well, it'll be a 40% cost reduction, 30%. Oh, maybe just a 20%. I will say this very clearly. 2/3 reduction in coverage, 6% cost savings. Now, money is money, it's all important, but you're giving up that much for only 6%? Didn't make sense. 27.4, why? We are in this international basin. We have to work with it. There's a lot of reservoirs in there, but simply stated, if we can get these urban areas protected to the flood of record, then the reservoirs can be operated for the rural areas, and it will also be benefit for the urban areas as well. But the bottom line is there will be better opportunities for reservoir management for the beneficial use of rural areas. 27.4, why? The statistical records that we have were basically taken during the 20th century. We're into the 21st now, we got a little records there, but at this time, that's what we were looking at. There was a lot of analysis done, particularly with various agencies, on looking at what that is. But it's not, we don't live in a decades-long period. We live in centuries-long period. So if these agencies took a look, which they did, in terms of, well, let's go back 100 years, 200 years, forward 100 years, 200 years, it was determined that the 20th century, the time when most of the statistical data was taken, was a drought period, or at least a drier period. So what kind of flood would we have had if it was during a wetter period? 27.4, why? Because it happened. There's no denying that. It did happen. 2011 was, as we all know, pretty horrific. So that being said, it also occurred similarly in 1881. No statistical data there, mostly anecdotal. Hydrology was completely different, but there was levels of flood that were close to or identical to the 2011 flood event. So it happened. We do have construction cost challenges. We all are facing that. We have some particularly unique situations here. Like I said, when we took a look at MI6 and got the bids for those and 7, it was pretty surprising. You can read the data. I've got running out of time here, but 30 to 50% construction bids over the engineer's estimate. And I took a look at the engineer's estimate. I could not fault them on it. They based it on the most recent data that they had. They did some inflationary factors. It did seem, even with that, it was a little off at 30 to 50. So we really had to take a look at that. The first thing we did when those 6 and 7 phases came in there, we repackaged them, rebid them, and the result was we did save approximately $12 million on those 2 phases. So that actually helped here. We had to look at why is this occurring? So we did some contractor evaluations and we got some feedback from them. Things we found out were things such as relocation of crews and labor to mine it for the region really wasn't ideal because of all the other work going on throughout the state. Cost of labor, we all know that was up significantly. Cost of materials, we know where that's been. Excuse me. Too much carryover from work before to meet our time frame. So that was a little complication too. So we've presented several options to the legislature when we were there. We had came by and we were very appreciative of what we got, $76.1 million for the next 5 biennia, total of $380.5 million. There's $304.4 million left currently. But we have to look with this new economic situation we're facing, we've got to look at what we can do here. So we got to take a look at this market data. And we have to evaluate it to achieve better pricing. Like I said, through repackaging, repricing, rebidding, that's helped us considerably. We're doing value engineering throughout the basin on any part of the project that is not done to see if we can still maintain our quality of product, but if there's some cost savings we can do there. This study should be done in January of 2025, so see what we can do there. We've got to take the models and update them once we see these factors come through. Like I said, we've got $304 million left under the current plan. We'll have to see what we can do there. So that concludes my presentation. I would sure encourage you to take a look at our website, mouseriverplan.com. If you have got other questions, get a hold of me anytime, any place. I'll be glad to do that. Construction videos on the YouTube site there can be certainly reached. So on behalf of the residents of the Mouse River Basin, thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you at this time.
One more round of applause for Dave and Chris. Well, thank you all for being here today. I do have some announcements, so please don't fly out the room quite yet. First of all, let me list our sponsors one last time because they are important sponsors. We couldn't put on this convention without them. Our water champions include A2S, Houston Engineering, Moore Engineering. Our water partners include Apex Engineering Group, Barke Engineering, Bartlett and West, Bismarck Mandan Convention and Visitors Bureau, Devil's Lake Basin Water Resource Board, Onstead Twitchell, Vogel Law Firm. Our water supporters include Ag Country, Farm Credit Services and Farm Credit Services of Mandan, Dakota Supply Group, Dwyer Law Office, HDR, Minnesota Valley Irrigation Bismarck, Montana Dakota Utilities Company, North Dakota Rural Water Systems Association, North Dakota Soybeans Growers Association. So our final resolutions committee meeting is meeting downstairs in 5 minutes, so make your way down there. Our social starts out here at 5:30. Our awards banquet begins in here at 6:30. Remember to bid on our silent auction items and to purchase your 50/50 tickets and your grand prize drawing tickets. I look forward to seeing you tonight. The hotel staff will be working in this room, so let's make our way out and go into the hall or into the, anyway, let's go next door so that they can set up for the banquet tonight. Thank you all for being here. Big shout out to especially our water user staff. They do an amazing job, make this all flow so smoothly, so thank you to them too. Thanks.